I want to explore something with you, something that sits at the very heart of our human confusion, which is the nature of freedom. But to do so, I feel we must first look at a life that became a profound mirror for this very inquiry. This isn't intended as a simple biography, because the facts of a life are only interesting in how they create the furnace that forges the questions. I am speaking of Jiddu Krishnamurti, who was born in 1895 inches, a small town in India, the eighth child of a poor Brahmin family. His early life was marked by a certain vagueness, a vulnerability, and it was perhaps this very openness that made him a candidate for one of the most extraordinary experiments of the 20th century, because his father worked for the Theosophical Society, a vast international spiritual organization with tens of thousands of members. This society had a grand unifying goal to unite the world's religions, but more than that, they were driven by a powerful prophecy, which was the predicted coming of a world teacher, a revolutionary spiritual figure who would usher in a new age. And in 1909, this young shy boy, Krishnamurti, was discovered by the Theosophists, who claimed his aura showed extraordinary features, most notably a total absence of selfishness. From that day on, his life was no longer his own. He was educated with immense care, not to be a free individual, but to become the vessel for the world's salvation, to grow into the role of the world teacher that had been chosen for him. His reputation spread rapidly through this global network, and he soon became the subject of a growing, intense worship, a living deity for many. And yet, as he grew into manhood, at the very same time his responsibilities within the organization increased, a profound doubt began to surface. He was beginning to question the very role he was meant to play, the very theosophical teachings he was meant to deliver. Then, in 1924, he underwent a deep, revealing spiritual experience that seemed to transform him, which was followed a year later by the unexpected and devastating death of his beloved brother Nitya, his one true companion. This loss had a revealing effect on him, forcing him to look at the raw functioning of the human psyche, at attachment and sorrow, which only further increased his doubts about the manufactured role the Theosophists wanted him to play. He continued, however, until 1929, when he finally decided to sever all links with the organization that had made him. In a speech that must have been utterly shocking to his followers, he finalized the break, and in doing so, laid the foundation for the teaching he would develop for the rest of his life. He stood before them and said, "I maintain that truth is a pathless land, and you cannot approach it by any path whatsoever, by any religion, by any sect." I want you to really feel the weight of that statement. What does it mean? It means that truth, being infinite, unconditioned, and alive, cannot be organized. It means the moment you create a path, a system, a dogma, a 7-step guide to enlightenment, you are no longer seeking truth. You are seeking comfort within a predefined system. He saw that any organization created for this purpose inevitably becomes a crutch, a shelter for those who are afraid. And in that very act of seeking shelter, they destroy their own freedom. We see this everywhere today, don't we? It's not just in formal religions, but in our political tribes, our follower culture, on social media, our echo chambers. We are terrified of being pathless, of being alone in our inquiry. So we desperately seek a group, an ism, an influencer, or a community that will give us a sense of security and identity. And in that very act of following, we hand over our responsibility. We stop observing for ourselves. From 1929 until his death, Krishnamurti went on this solitary crusade, traveling the world, speaking to ever larger audiences, not to offer them a new path, but to implore them to see how all paths, all systems of belief are prisons for the mind. And as the years passed, foundations and committees were created in his wake, not by him, but around him, for the sole purpose of preserving and protecting the integrity of these teachings, teachings which are not a doctrine, but a relentless, shared inquiry into the human condition. And the central theme, the thread that runs through every talk, every dialogue, is this question of freedom. We all demand freedom, don't we? It seems to be a fundamental human cry. We demand it politically, fighting for our rights, our autonomy, our ability to vote and speak. We demand it religiously, wanting the freedom to believe what we wish or not to believe at all. We cherish the freedom of choice, the simple capacity to decide our own path in life, where to live, what to buy, who to love. And of course, political freedom is essential. One must have it to live with basic dignity. But I must ask you, and I ask myself this constantly, have we ever, with the same passion, with the same desperation, demanded to find out whether it is at all possible to be free inwardly? Or is our entire focus on the outer while the inner remains a chaotic, unexamined dungeon? Because it seems to me that our minds, my mind, your mind, are slaves to their own projections, bound by chains we ourselves have forged. The mind is a slave to its own demands, to its relentless desires, and the hollow promise of their fulfillment. It's a slave to its cravings, its ambitions, its petty appetites, its fears. We never seem to ask whether it is possible to be free from this slavery. Instead, we are always wanting freedom outwardly, wanting to go against the society, to rebel against a particular structure, to blame the system, the government, the corporations, the other. But I ask you, what is this society? Who created this ballet thing, as Krishnamurti would say? Who is truly responsible for all this mess? The church, the temple, the mosque, and all the rituals, all the circuses that go on inside them, who is responsible for this? The market, with its relentless drive for profit and consumption, creating mountains of waste and oceans of anxiety, who built that? The nation state, with its flags and its armies, demanding our allegiance and our lives, who drew those lines? Is this society something different from you? Or have you created this society? Have we, each one of us, collectively built this entire structure through our own inner life, through our personal ambition to get to the top, through our individual greed for more security, more possessions, more status, through our envy of the person who has what we want, through our own hidden violence, our corruption, our deep and abiding fear? We have created this society because we, as individuals, crave security. We are terrified of being alone, of being uncertain. So we flock together and create a community, a nation, a tribe, a belief system. And then, having built this collective structure from our own fear and desire, we turn around and blame the society for what it demands of us, for the very prisons it creates. This is a very serious question one must ask of oneself, not academically, but with real intent. We must look at whether the freedom we seek is merely a freedom from the bondage, an escape from the prison which we have built for ourselves. If one is in a prison, both physically and inwardly, then of course the escape from that physical enclosure is called freedom. But what about the psychological prison? The prison you have built for yourself by your own desires, by your own anxieties, your loneliness, your beliefs, your traditions, your accumulated memories. When you seek freedom from that, are you truly free? Or is your escape still a reaction, a movement that is defined entirely by the prison walls? If I escape my prison of nationalism, only to join a prison of internationalism or humanism or any otherism, have I found freedom? Or have I merely swapped one cell for another, perhaps one with a better view, but a cell nonetheless? My escape is still within the area, the field of the prison itself, because the desire to escape is born of the prison. Therefore, it is not freedom at all. So, I must ask, and you must ask, is there a freedom that is not a reaction, a freedom per se, for itself, not away from something or for something? This requires us to understand for ourselves why we are always trying to escape or to rationalize or to go beyond that which is. We are constantly running away from what we are, from the direct fact of our loneliness, our fear, our envy. If one can understand that which is, and I don't mean understand it intellectually or verbally, but see the depth of it, see the truth of it, the substance, the vitality of it, then something else becomes possible. If you can perceive the fact of your loneliness, the whole structure of it, and remain with that, observe that movement, learn from it rather than memorizing what someone else has said about it. If one goes very deeply into that without any motive to escape, then perhaps there is freedom per se. This inquiry into a freedom that is not a reaction, a freedom that is not an escape, brings us immediately to the great walls of our own inner prison. It is a teaching, a mirror that points to the way our own self-centered thought, in its desperate search for individual security, for certainty, for permanence, is the very architect of the fear and mental disorder that block our access to that freedom. But it also emphasizes something extraordinary, that when there is a profound direct understanding of the source and the nature of these thought-created blocks, it is possible for a human being to end them. And that freedom, that unconditioned state, may then come uninvited when we are not seeking it as a reward. So we must, with great seriousness, go into this question of our psychological burdens, and let us begin with the one that shadows almost every human life. What is the root of fear? Is it not thought? And is it not also time? Let's go into this together very carefully. I ask, is fear born of thought? And by thought, I mean the entire mechanism of the mind, the accumulated memories, the database of knowledge, the library of experiences, both pleasurable and painful. All our knowledge is born from experience, and from that knowledge, thought arises, projecting, judging, and concluding. But all knowledge is, by its very nature, limited, because it's always in the past. Your experience from yesterday is finished, it is a memory, and therefore it is limited. So, thought, born of this limited knowledge, is itself intrinsically limited. Now, is this the mechanism that creates fear? I am not speaking of the immediate biological fear, the sensible response to a physical danger. If a bus is speeding towards you, you jump, which is not fear, but intelligence. I am speaking of the psychological fears that haunt us. Thinking about tomorrow, thinking about what might happen. The fear that one's partner may run away, the fear of losing one's job, the fear of public speaking, the fear of not being successful, the fear of loneliness, the fear of death. All of these are born from thinking in terms of the future or being bound by the pain of the past. Is that not the primary cause of fear thought? Please, as the speaker would say, don't accept this. Look at it for yourself. Look at your own anxiety. When you feel that knot in your stomach about a deadline or a difficult conversation, what is it? It is thought projecting an image of failure, an image of conflict, an image of you being diminished. When you look at your life and feel the dread of meaninglessness or the fear of getting old, it is thought comparing the what is with an idealized image of what should be, an image manufactured by your culture, your education, your own desires. This me, this I that is so afraid, is itself a construct of thought, a bundle of memories and ambitions. And so, psychological fear is the shadow cast by this me as it projects itself into the future. And what is the other factor? Time. Not time by the clock, not the chronological time needed to catch a train or build a house, but psychological time. Time, which is the movement from here to there, from being this to becoming that. Time is tomorrow. I might lose my job tomorrow. I might become blind next year. I will be alone when I am old. This tomorrow, the psychological future, is the space in which thought breeds fear. So, do you see? Time and thought are not two separate things in this context. They are the roots of fear, and they are inextricably linked. Psychological time is the movement of thought. It is thought which is the past, projecting itself into the future. And in that very projection, it creates the me who can gain or lose, the me who can be hurt, the me who is afraid of ending. Now, this points to a profound dilemma because thought has also created the most marvelous world technologically, has it not? We must be fair and see the whole picture. The incredible things thought has done in the world of medicine, surgery, in communications that connect the globe in an instant, in the sciences that explore the cosmos, even the computer, which is a marvel of logical thought. Thought has a necessary and useful role in our daily activities, in creating, organizing, and functioning in the world of facts. The problem, the catastrophe, begins when thought, which is divisive by its very nature, creates a division between you and me at a psychological level. Please, let's look at this carefully. Let's find out if this is true. How does thought create this division? Thought is the me. My me is a collection of memories, experiences, conclusions, beliefs, my nationality, my religion, my political ideology, my family name, my ambitions, my hurts. All of this is the past. All of this is the content of my thought. And your me is the content of your thought. And these two structures of thought, these two me's, are instantly in comparison, in competition, and therefore in conflict. My wife and me, my God and your God, my country and your country. This whole process of division is going on throughout life, from the most intimate relationship to the global stage, and is thought the cause of it. If thought is the cause of this divisive process, and I'm suggesting you must find out if it is, then we are faced with a question that is much more serious, a question that cuts to the root of human existence. Is it possible for thought to function completely and efficiently in one area, the physical, technological, daily world, but completely end in the psychological world? Can thought build the car but not create the me who is proud of owning the car? Can it perform the surgery but not create the ambitious surgeon who creates it possible for thought to function in the world of facts but to be utterly still and therefore absent in the world of the psyche? So when I see this, when I truly see, not just as an idea but as a fact, that my own psychological thought is the cause of this divisive process, this me versus you, my tribe versus your tribe, my belief versus your belief. What is my responsibility? We will come very near home now. If I see this thing going on, not just in the world, but in me, and I see that I belong to a certain tribe, whether it's called nationalism or a certain religious sect or even a political party, and I see with absolute clarity that this belonging is the very factor that brings about division and therefore inevitable conflict, then I am faced with a choice. I can either accept that conflict, shrug my shoulders, and follow the usual traditional path, which is the path of our entire human history, a path of endless war and suffering. Or I must no longer belong to any country, actually not belong, not just in a superficial, symbolic way, but inwardly, psychologically, to no longer identify with any tribe, any group, any sect, or any religion, because I have seen for myself that they are the very factors of division and conflict. This is not a political act, it is a profound act of psychological freedom. But then the question immediately arises, how do I become free of this conditioning when my entire consciousness is this conditioning? This is why it is so imperative, so absolutely essential, that one understand oneself deeply, not by going to a psychologist, not by reading a book, not by following a guru, but by understanding all the responses, the conditioning, the various temperaments, characteristics, and tendencies as they arise in the mirror of relationship, in the mirror of daily life. And the only way to do this is to learn to watch, but to watch without the observer. Now, what on earth does that mean? This is perhaps the most critical point in this entire inquiry. When we say I'm going to observe myself, we instantly create a duality, don't we? There is I, the observer, the censor, the judge, the entity who has learned and accumulated, and there is the thing I am observing, such as my anger or my envy or my fear. The I, the observer, says, I must not be angry or I must overcome my envy. But who is this observer? Is the observer not just another fragment of thought, a part of the very past, a part of the very conditioning that created the anger or the envy in the first place? The observer is the observed. The me who says I am envious is not separate from the feeling of envy. The me is that envy. The me is that bundle of memories, of comparison and desire. When I, as the observer of the past, try to control envy, which I have named and separated from myself, I am merely creating a conflict within myself. It is just thought playing a trick. One fragment of thought trying to control another fragment of thought, which only perpetuates the conflict and wastes enormous energy. But is it possible to observe without this observer? To see the arising of envy, not as my envy, but simply to see the fact of that energy that responds with a choiceless awareness, without judging it, without naming it, without trying to change it or escape from it. In that moment of pure observation, where the past, which is the observer, is silent, the division between the observer and the observed ceases. In that silence, you see the thing as it is, and in that total seeing, the thing itself undergoes a radical transformation. The seeing is the act of learning, and that is the only true action. This is what we must be concerned with in education. We are so concerned with what our children will be, what jobs they will get. Parents all over the world ask this question. How can we help our children to be intelligent and free and responsible human beings in today's world? But I must ask, are the parents themselves intelligent and free and responsible? Are the teachers, is the society, the educational system helping them to be free and responsible and intelligent? Or is it merely conditioning them to fit into the machine of society, to become ambitious, competitive, and fearful, just like their parents? True education means a holistic approach to life, cultivating the brain technologically, teaching it the skills it needs to function, and also cultivating the brain to be free of its own petty little self, its own destructive conditioning. But this requires teachers who understand this, who are committed to this inner freedom themselves, and it requires parents who truly love their children, which means they are more concerned with their child's freedom than with their child's conformity to the patterns of security we have created. This brings us to the ultimate attachment, the ultimate fear, death. We are attached to our lives, our furniture, our wives, our husbands, our memories, our ambitions, our failures. We are attached to this me. And then death comes and says, that is the end of it, and it cuts the cord, and we are terrified of this. But what if we misunderstand death? Time, the past and the future is contained in the now. So, is it possible that death is also now? This death of the ego is not some mystical event, but the act of ending attachments in the present. Can you be free of your attachment now? Not how do I become free, but can you see the attachment, see its nature, and let it go, die to it? In this moment, can you live with death, which is to end your ambition now? To live without ambition, without psychological comparison, requires tremendous energy, not the energy to do more mischief, but the energy of a mind that is no longer in conflict. When you live this way, death and life are not separate. They always march together. You are dying to every moment, to every experience, to every pleasure and pain, and therefore you are living with an extraordinary freshness. And when you live like that, you will never deliberately hurt another, never kill another, because you are no longer protecting the me, which is the root of all violence. From this absolute freedom, this dying to the self, we may discover what love is and what the true religious mind is. To understand love not intellectually, but to have the depth of it, the flame of it, the beauty of it. How can there be jealousy? How can there be ambition, aggression, or violence? If I am attached to you, is that love? Or is it that I am using you for my pleasure, my security, my companionship, and the fear of losing that investment is what I call love. Where there is real love, you can do what you will because that action will be right action. It will never bring conflict into your life. So, can one be free of all these other things that we call love, the jealousy, the antagonism, the conflict, the pain of relationship, not tomorrow, but now? And to find out what is the religious mind, what is the truth of religion, one must be free from all authority, all belief, all faith, all dogma, because they are all the creations of thought, paths laid down by others who are also afraid. A true religious mind does not belong to anything. It must be totally free. This, then, is meditation. It is not the practice of a system to get a reward, to get illumined, which is all so childish. Meditation is the state of a mind that is totally free from all bondage, all measurement, all conflict. So the brain becomes quiet, utterly still. And that silence, that stillness, which is not forced or cultivated, has its own beauty, its own truth, its own absolute, immeasurable quality. Truth is something which cannot be measured, and it has no path to it. And that is beauty, that is love,